Governor Ron DeSantis is about to join us, but right before he does, I want to talk about the GOAT that is Tom Brady as he is approaching 45 years of age and continuing to prove he's the closest thing to Benjamin Button that we have or probably will ever see. He's been able to defy Father Time and seems to only get better with age, like a fine wine. But the real question is, will he add another Super Bowl to his already sterling resume? I say yes. And to sleep on Tom Brady is dangerous in its own right. But just by looking at the tape, he still really checks all the physical boxes to be able to guide an offense to a Super Bowl in today's game. His arm's still capable of fitting the ball into tight windows. He rarely gets hit, but when he does, he pops right back up and hustles to the next spot. And his mental acuity on the field is still only rivaled by Rain Man in a casino as he continues to put his offenses in good situations pre-snap. Now, the Buccaneers already have a team around him that I think is capable of winning a Super Bowl, whether it's Wirfs at tackle, Mike Evans out wide, and Tom has won Super Bowls with much less talent on the roster than he does right now. So long story short, Brady ain't done winning Super Bowls, and don't be surprised if he actually ends up winning a couple more before he truly does become Benjamin Button and turns into a toddler. We appreciate you guys joining us. As a former number 12 at Michigan, Cone,
look,
you know, how many do you think Tom's got? Number one, how long do you think he plays, and how many Super Bowls has he got left in the tank or whatever chamber he goes home and breathes in that alien air?
Well, look, I just appreciate any time we're talking about Michigan quarterbacks. You know, they're a different breed, so thank you for that. How much longer does he play? I mean, look, I'm done with the betting against Tom Brady situation.
It's not a smart
It's like
game.
Nick Saban. It's not a good move. Does he get another one? Again, yes, he wins another. He wins it every year for the rest of his time playing because I'm done with the betting against Tom Brady situation. Well, I was thinking about this when considering the greatest ever at a certain craft. Longevity is such a key factor. Tom Brady could have retired a decade ago, right? He would still be a 3-time Super Bowl champion. He would still be in the conversation to be one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. But because of his ability to be wholly integrated with his strategy of nutrition and diet and sleep to be able to play this long, he told us he was going to play until 45. And Max Kellerman and everybody else, everybody laughed at him. And the first interception he would throw every season, they'd say he's done. And look, he's playing until he's 45, and he's still winning at a high level. I mean, I'm looking at these numbers here. Of course, he had the most yards and the most touchdowns in the league last season. But in today's age, throwing for the most yards is not a great metric to determine quarterbacks, right? I always talk about completion percentage and touchdown to interception ratio. He was 67.5 in completion percentage last season, which is the highest he's had in the last 14 years. 3.5 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio, highest in the last 4 years, including higher than when he won the Super Bowl. So, you know, whereas I think Michael Jordan's the greatest basketball player of all time, but because LeBron James has been able to play at such a high level for such a long time, it ends up being a conversation between Blaine and myself. Tiger Woods, I think most people would consider he's the greatest golfer of all time, but because he hasn't had the same level of success the last decade of his career as he had the first decade, people are always going to say, well, look what Jack Nicklaus was able to do. But I think Tom Brady has removed himself from even being in a conversation.
Well, I've never seen somebody be in their prime for so long. I mean, you talk about longevity and success. If I'm going to build a mathematical formula to find the greatest ever, it's probably going to be longevity, success over championships divided by, you know, how many friends you made. I don't know. But it is unbelievable. And when you're on a diet that involves just eating coral and drinking the tears of gypsies,
is that what it is?
I guess this is what happens, Blaine. Does Tom win another one?
I mean, I agree with David. Why would I bet against him at this point? I know. Well, the good thing about it is like he's keeping his number one receivers. I mean, they got Chris Godwin back. You're going to keep Mike Evans. No one knows about Gronk. We'll see about Gronk. I think he retires. I would agree with you.
They still have tight ends.
Yeah. You got to think, who did they lose to last year in the playoffs? The Super Bowl champion. Matt Stafford.
And had to lead a game-winning drive.
Yeah, I know. So I wouldn't bet against Tom. The good thing about it, their defense will stay intact somewhat. Their defense at this point in the NFL needs to be good enough to at least get a good amount of turnovers. We saw the Bengals defense. That wasn't great. Started playing a lot better in the playoffs, but created a lot of turnovers. And that's how you win games if you're not a phenomenal defense. But at this point, I don't know why anybody would bet against Tom Brady. The dude's found the key to the secret lock. I mean, his whole life, his whole career has been his prime.
Yeah, it's true. Well, and two, you know, when you watch him, and I brought this up, I want to see what the Booster Club thinks. We'll hit them in a second before we get Governor DeSantis in here. But when you watch the way he operates, like there is from a timing, from how quick he's making a decision to the when the ball's getting out, where the ball's getting thrown, he's still obviously very effective in the vertical game, in the intermediate game, in the short game. But I always go back to what a buddy of mine, Dave Tollefson, former defensive end, was with Strahan at the Giants, when they won the 2 Super Bowls there with Eli. What he always told me, because when we were coaching together, I'd always ask him, to you out there on the field or just watching it now that your career is over, which quarterbacks gave you the most problems and why? And he said Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. And you're like, well, duh. But he's like, not for the reason you think. He's like, the reason that they are so effective is because typically there are not greedier people on the planet than quarterbacks and offensive coordinators. And I got a lot of offensive coordinator buddies out there. I love them. You were a quarterback. Y'all are greedy people. I'm sorry. In this sport, y'all are the greediest people. And it's so hard for a quarterback and an offensive coordinator to nickel and dime and be patient and actually really take what the defense is giving them all the way down the field. And he used to say, what used to kill me? We'd have everything covered up, and they would spit it down to the check down or spit it down to the spot, or they'd hit the tight end on the hitch or a little bit of out, a little bit of option route, depending on who's on them, how are they squared up, or the inside shade, outside shade. And he's like, they would just do it all the way down the field. They had no problem getting 4 yards at a time. Because most of the time, after about 3 or 4 plays, that offensive coordinator's gonna be like, all right, we got to dial it up, or the quarterback's like, yeah, the second read becomes the first read. We're going deep. So when I look at what Tom's been able to do, he has not lost a step to me.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable to see. And again, I know he sleeps in a bubble with air from Jupiter.
Cryogenic chamber.
That's whatever it is, whatever they put Austin Powers in to freeze him, and then he had to go back and get his mojo. But Tom Brady, to me, again, I think Benjamin Button is the best example that I can use. Because it's like the dude's getting younger. 67.5 completion percentage, his highest in 14 years.
Yeah, 13.
He's not getting
14,
worse.
Yeah, 14.
It's unbelievable.
One comment on the check down here before people just think they can check the ball
That's
all the way
not
down.
what I'm
You know
saying.
what I mean? That only works when you have the ability to blow the top off the defense or throw the whole shot to the field, right? And you think somebody who's 45 years old, how are you still throwing whole shots to the field? How are you still hitting receivers in stride 55 yards down the field? When you have that ability, and that's always a threat, or we're talking about tight end threat, for him, he throws the seam route better than anyone, right? Off the play action. When you have that ability, now all of a sudden those check down routes to a lot of the backs he had in New England, or even a lot of the slot stuff they're doing down in Tampa Bay, is then effective.
That's very true. You can't build it from front to back like that. I agree 100%. And as a defensive guy, I am much more worried about you torching me on the post. Are you torching me on the vert? Are you double moving me with Tom Brady? But even the digs, I mean, the intermediate, passing game is so
I wouldn't say Tom Brady throws a bad ball when it comes to anything, whether it's the deep ball, the dig, the seam route. And you saw it now, and they started with the Patriots. The Patriots almost kind of started this movement, and you see it a lot more now in the league today, just flaring it out to the back.
Why do you think they started that? Who's their head coach? The smartest defensive guy there is, and he knows. He knows. He's like, what would give me the most problems?
Yeah, you're basically, and I know it comes down to the downs and yardage, but if it's 3rd and 2, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 and less right now, you're seeing clear out routes. Let's get our back in space. You make one guy miss, and even if you don't get it, you get 3 to 4, and it gives you the chance to go to 4th down. You're seeing this so much in the league now. It's just flare, clear out. And I know you have to be able to take the top off. You have to be able to make them worry about that, but still, I do think there's times now that they immediately know we're clearing this out and we're getting it to the back. We're getting it to the back to make a play.
Well, a lot of those plays, and you look at like bubbles and swings,
leverage,
stuff like that. Well, they're glorified runs is what they are. You're trying to get the ball out quick. I mean, you get a bubble out quicker and you hand it off from under center if you really want to be honest about it. So it's so interesting to me to continue to see him. And another thing about Tom is that he took, he was Patriots guy, right? Patriot system, Bill Belichick's guy. He showed that he could go somewhere else and be able to win it. And I do think Tom Brady is still the best I have ever seen at extending the play within the pocket.
Okay.
Being able to have that feel and that instinct in the pocket to be able to not only step up and throw, but step laterally and throw, because he's not going to sit there and Patrick Mahomes you and spin you out, or Russell Wilson you and keep the play going for 7, 8 seconds. He knows he's got to get that ball up pretty quick. But when it comes to being able to step up, when it comes to having feel of where that end is, he makes the tackles look good sometimes because he can save them, and it's almost kind of like he's like Daredevil. He's the blind superhero that can see. It's like he's got sonar coming out of his ears.
All right, Travis Elrod, is Aaron Rodgers the only QB in NFL history that has more raw talent than Tom Brady?
Well, I don't think Tom Brady's is pure raw talent. I think if you put Tom Brady on the athleticism, raw talent scale of all NFL quarterbacks ever, he's way down the list.
I agree.
But it goes to show you that it's an all-encompassing thing. He's able to make his teammates better, and he's athletic enough and he's smart enough that mental acuity I was talking about makes you more athletic. It almost replaces that because it's timing, right? Tom gets the ball out quick and he reads the whole field. I'm a lot more deadly, and this is what I worry about with Malik Willis, and it's going to take him some time to be able to read the whole field, because if you can read the whole field, you can find where I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I think you've got to look at it. He's just athletic enough.
Yep.
He's just on that fringe of being athletic
There
enough.
are dozens and dozens of quarterbacks who have had more raw talent, which makes what Tom Brady has done even more impressive.
That's exactly right.
And when I was at Michigan, our OC, Scott Leffler, had us watch Tom Brady's freshman tape compared to his junior and then senior year tape when they were playing against Alabama, and he's throwing that game-winning touchdown with someone right in his face, breaking down like how basically he progressed each year.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to see how he got better every season. And now you look at, after a 20-year NFL career, we're talking about someone who's almost 45, has continued to still find little ways to improve his game. It's almost like next year I'll be better at football than I was the year before, even though I've won more Super Bowls than any single franchise in history.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like on Wolf of Wall Street. We're about to get the governor in here, but like on Wolf of Wall Street, when he sits him down, if you got all the quarterbacks in the room and you sat him down and he was like, sell me this pen. You go up to the fastest guy, sell me this pen. Well, it's a good pen. It looks good. He goes to Tom Brady. He's like, sell me this pen. He takes a pen and goes, hey, write my name down. Like, Tom Brady's that guy.
Yeah.
He's the guy that figures out. He's the guy that's doing the Rubik's Cube without looking, like Helen Keller style. So, hey, if you like that content, go ahead and subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, String in a Cup. As long as you're listening, we appreciate you. Go subscribe now. It's Cranic Company.